Let's get you more reaction from here at home now. Speak to our reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo, live to us now in our studio. And as expected, Ziyanda, divergent views already emerging, not only on the political spectrum, but among ordinary South Africans.
Absolutely, and I think the statement by the EFF is indicative of such. They use this opportunity to say, well, let's not forget the legacy of colonialism in different parts of the continent. Whether you're talking about Kenya and the Mau Mau rebellion, whether even if you bring it back here at home, through the sustenance of the apartheid regime, at different points then this has been and is part of the legacy of the late Queen. And I suppose it comes with the territory when you memorialize someone who's as old as she is, who's lived through different time periods. She led the post-war period, in the UK, and she facilitated the entry into and out of the European Union. That just tells you just how much her legacy spans. And of course, there has been some criticism for those who have not really given that positive kind of reaction to her passing. But certainly, if you look at what has been happening, outside the Birmingham Palace and the ordinary citizens in the UK paying tribute to the late Queen, and we know then that the new King Charles will be going on a tour of the United Kingdom in the next 10 days as a part of memorializing her and a part of Operation London Bridge.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how these institutions interact. We've already seen reaction from the AmaZulu nation, one of the largest monarchs here at home,
yes,
responding to the largest monarch in the Northern Hemisphere. I wonder what we should make of that response. Well, first, tell us what was said by Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and then your reading into, let's face it, these historic moments for both these institutions.
I think the reason why this is historic is because of how, dare I say, the institutional of the royal monarchy is under siege, right, as it were, in the sense that there's in all these democracies across the world, there's a sense that the space and the role of monarchies is now diminishing. And I think a similar instance can be, or similarity can be made with the AmaZulu royal monarchy. Obviously, in the UK, it's quite different in the sense that the Queen would have a say in who the Prime Minister becomes, whereas here, ours is a constitutional democracy, and yes, the royal monarchy is recognized. There's very little power that comes when it comes to the governance of the country. So when it comes to those similarities, of course, then there would be a lot of parallels that are drawn in terms of how the institutions are run, what they represent in terms of preserving heritage of the people that they represent or that they are the custodians of. And this is exactly what was reflected in the statement of, the AmaZulu traditional Prime Minister, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, yesterday.
Yeah. It'll also be interesting to see how ordinary South Africans respond to this moment. In a context, as you've mentioned, the resonance towards these monarchies appears to be a whole lot more critical than it was a few years ago. And, part of the questions I was raising is, what should that mean for how the president responds to this moment? We know he's released his own statement.
He has released his own statement expressing condolences on behalf of South Africans. Some on social media saying, well, which South Africans are you speaking for? But I mean, of course, that social media is but a small pool of, the citizenry. I think more than anything, I was just listening to some of the commentary yesterday coming out of the UK, and how over the years there's been growing divisions over the role of the monarchy, and some really not even believing in the institution itself, and how already there's some sort of pontification over what the new king is likely to bring in, how the Queen did not necessarily enter into the fray when it came to the politics of the day, but King Charles being more of someone who is more vocal about politics, and how this is obviously the end of an era, literally, and how maybe this is also going to see a change in which the monarchy interacts then with its citizenry, with its subjects, also in the context of democracies across the world. So, to go back to your question about how the president responds, I think it's also within that backdrop of being careful not to, offend those who still deeply believe in the institution of the monarchy, but also being fair and aware of, the reality of how they themselves are institutions that are having to reform, having to shift rather, how they interact and how they do things, given especially with the British monarchy, with the legacy of colonialism and what that has meant, the reparations that they've paid in certain parts of the continent. So these are all things that if we look at where we are now, that you cannot simply ignore.
The UK going into a period of 10 days of mourning. That means you and I are going to be having these kind of discussions for a few more times. For now, thanks very much indeed. Ziyanda Ngcobo, our politics reporter, live to us there in our studios.